Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 203, Monday, September 25th, 2017. Thank you so much for tuning in. Got a lot of news to get to today. Before I get into the topics of the day, I would like to comment first of all on something, on a video that Fern Sincheisen, one of my subscribers and a commenter, asked me to take a look at. And I think this was back from last Friday. She asked me to take a look at another video from this YouTuber who goes by the handle Son of Nuo, and the title of the video is I forget the exact title, but it's whether or not Paul Manafort may be a mole. So anyway, I watched the video, and I do like this guy. As far as a YouTuber, he does a really good job. He lays out his case very well, does a good job with the sourcing, explains everything very well. As I said, I've seen videos of his before, and you know, he's a good YouTuber. I have no problem with what he's doing. It's you know, I agree with a lot of the things he says. However, and even in this video, there's some things I have points of agreement, but I do not. I'm not prepared to be completely buying into the idea that Manafort was a mole in the classical sense, meaning, is he someone that was working for the other side, who got into the Trump campaign to unearth information, or somehow, you know, act as a mole against Trump. I really don't believe that that is the case. And you know, again, I know about Paul Manafort. He's an international political, you know, expert, and he works for all over the world, really. I mean, he's an international type guy, and yeah, he's like any other lawyer. He can argue it either way. He can work for either side, whatever. So yeah, I mean, I do understand all this about Paul Manafort, but I still am having a rough time believing that he would be a mole in the classical sense. And you know, as far as the source on a lot of what the Son of Nuo is talking about there, he's using the CNN article for a lot of his sourcing. He has other sources as well, and of course I even used some of that CNN article, because when it came out, everybody was looking at it and commenting on it. There's some good information there, but I'm still not 100% sold on the article and CNN. It's just things that you can comment on. But anyway, there's a couple other things too. He talks about the surveillance on Manafort, which started, then it stopped, then he becomes, you know, part of Trump's campaign, then it starts again afterwards. And I think the what happened there, the explanation for that, I think, is not something I think's, you know, kind of creepy or, you know, suspicious. I think what happens is they went and got the first warrant, which was back from 2014, and the very first warrant had to do with the fact that Manafort had been meeting with some people in Viktor Yanukovych's inner circle, the Ukrainian politician, and of course something like that is always going to get you under surveillance. Manafort knows that. He's probably been surveilled many times. Anytime that you go overseas and have any type of relations with any foreign diplomat, you're going to be looked at and probably surveilled. That's just almost automatic. I think most foreign diplomats understand that. International businessmen like Manafort understand that, you know, the government wants to know what you're talking about. And they'll certainly have no problem getting surveillance on you when you're communicating with foreign leaders, especially in the Ukrainian situation, because, of course, the issue was we were opposed to Yanukovych. We eventually performed a coup or a putsch to push him out. And so certainly they were interested in what Manafort was, what his dealings were with Yanukovych or people around Yanukovych. So I think what happens a lot of times, they got this warrant for the surveillance, but these warrants, whether it's a FISA warrant or a general criminal warrant, they have dates on them. And so you have a date and say, okay, we'll give you permission to surveil for this time period to this time period. And depending on the situation will depend on how much time you get. Sometimes you get 24 hours of surveillance. Sometimes it's 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, a week, a month, a year. But it's usually not any more than a year, usually like several months. And then you got to go back to the FISA court, or you got to go back to the criminal court, and you have to show them what information you've gained through the surveillance. And if they feel that it's warranted, then they'll extend or reauthorize more surveillance. So I think what happened here was that he was dealing with this Ukrainian situation, Manafort, That's what got him under surveillance the first time. Then, of course, it stops because apparently whatever they learned from the surveillance, there wasn't enough for them to continue the surveillance or get a reauthorization of the warrant. Then he goes to work for the Trump campaign, and then, of course, we know that he has this meeting with Veselnitskaya. And we know that was all set up and everything like that. And that's why they got the second warrant. At least that is what is being alleged by a lot of news reports. So I think that explains the lapse in between the two times that Manafort was under surveillance. I don't think there's anything terribly suspicious there. Of course, we now know that the investigation into Manafort has turned primarily not so much a Russia thing, although there's some evidence that he may have communicated to some Russian official who knows Putin that he would keep him updated on how the election was going. I don't know if I doubt that that's anything illegal, but that's something that's popped up. But primarily, Mueller is focused on Manafort right now on his on two issues: money laundering and tax evasion. So it appears that they're going to try to use money laundering and tax evasion as the barbs to get at Manafort, and then pressure him over these two things to try to give them something for Manafort to give them, Mueller, something on Trump. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's a mole. I don't really have any fear of that at all. Roger Stone, definitely not a mole. Clean as a whistle there. He's a hardcore Trump supporter. And we still don't really know about these warrants either, the types of warrants and the cause of these warrants. So until really there's more information comes out, I'm not prepared to go, full retard and say that Manafort was a mole. I'm not prepared to go that far, but it's an interesting video that anyone that wants to watch it. He lays out a fairly interesting case. He could be correct. I could be wrong. But at this point, my take on it is that I don't believe that Manafort was a mole. But thank you, Fern, for recommending that to me. And I enjoyed watching the video, and that's my thoughts on it. Let's see. Merkel. Merkel was reelected reelected fairly easily, and that's no big surprise. For those of you who don't know much about Germany or Europe, well, I'm sure you all know Europe is a very left-leaning place. A very left-leaning place. There's 9 political parties in Germany. 9. The two biggest parties, the biggest one, Merkel is the head of, the Christian Democratic Party. Then there's a second party. It's a socialist party, and the former head of the EU, what's his name, the crazy German dude, he's the head of that party. And I think they got like 22%. Merkel got like 40-something. And then the other 7 parties split the rest. And there's only one party out of all 9 that's really what we would consider even close to being a conservative or libertarian type party or anything like that. Of course, nationalism is not real popular in Germany or really anywhere in Europe, simply because when you say nationalism in Germany, they think Hitler. So still the Hitler effect has never worn off, and it really needs to. But you are seeing some bit of nationalism return, but it just runs up against so much of a overwhelming amount of resistance because of that complex that the Europeans, particularly the Germans, have from Hitler. And but it's a very left-leaning place. I think it's unfortunate, and I believe that unfortunately, like an alcoholic or a bad drug addict, the Europeans are going to have to hit rock bottom before they finally wake up and realize that they're headed really down the wrong path, and it may be already be too late, especially for some of these countries like France. They're going to lose their country. They're going to lose their culture. They've already lost control of their borders, their language, everything. It's not good. I don't see good things for Europe. I see, unfortunately, it's going to have to continue going the way it's going, and eventually it will just all collapse, and it will be ugly, and it will be bad. They will be like any other alcoholic or anything else. They are going to have to actually hit rock bottom in Europe before they wake up. It's a shame, but that's my thoughts. I wish reform could happen sooner. I wish they could wake up sooner. I just think it's it's very, very tough in Europe. It's a very left-leaning place. So, that's what happened in Germany. They still got Merkel, unfortunately. Gateway Pundit has an interesting story talking about the Mueller investigation being desperate. as more information about Obama's illegal spying is uncovered. And Jim Hoft, the Gateway Pundit, does a good interview with Dick Morris, and they're discussing this issue. And this goes back to what I was saying a couple weeks ago, is the reason that you're seeing the Mueller investigation shift to financial crimes, particularly with Manafort, is first of all, they found no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. And so he's got to get something, and his best bet, he's thinking at this point, is to go find someone like Paul Manafort, get something on him. And they're looking at financial crimes, money laundering and tax evasion, something like that. Use Manafort, put pressure on him, get him to say something about Trump. And the reason that Mueller is having to move in this direction is because, just as being discussed in this article, what we're seeing in the past few weeks is the closer and closer Mueller gets in trying to find some ties to Russia or Russian collusion, the more he realizes that in order to expose anything like that, what it actually does is it more or less exposes the criminal activities that were going on by the Obama administration with all the surveillance and all the other things. We're learning about, we had Susan Rice come in and testify that she did all this unmasking. Samantha Power, we know, and she's going to have to come in and explain. We now know it's a fact that the Trump Tower was likely under surveillance. That's probably where they surveilled, got the intelligence on Manafort. And a lot of these other things are coming unraveled that are relative to the Russian issue. So this is why Mueller is having to move into another territory, into more like financial crime stuff. He's moving away from the Russia stuff because it only exposes, in fact, the crimes of the Obama administration and what was happening there. And that's why he's being forced to move away from it. And, of course, he's feeling this pressure. And that's exactly what's happening there. It's what I talked about a couple, maybe 2 weeks ago. And now you're seeing some other pundits realizing the exact same thing, that there are just too many dangers there in that part of the swamp for Mueller to wade in too deep. And he realizes in order to make any type of a case against Russia and things like that, exactly that takes him into some very dangerous territory and unearths some facts that they need to hide. And it also, if they tried to prosecute under any of these things, then the attorneys for whoever they're trying to prosecute, Trump or Manafort or Carter or anyone else, their attorneys will be able to dig in to these issues, which probably Obama, the Clintons, Loretta Lynch, James Comey, and all these people, they don't want Mueller going there for good reason. But it's not going to matter because this entire Trump-Russia thing is going away, as I said it would months ago, and eventually what will be left standing is the truth. And the truth is that, well, we know what the truth is. The Obama administration conducted a massive surveillance operation on the Trump campaign to destroy his candidacy and later his presidency, and it's still continuing to this day in the form of cover-up and blocking the Justice Department and the FBI from being able to get to the truth. But we are going to get to the truth. Trust me. Paul Nehlen already under fire from Big Ears Ryan and the establishment Republican, the Chamber of Commerce, and all the rest. You see, they realize that Big Ears Ryan is in serious trouble. This is very early to start the attacks, but they have started the attacks. And of course, Paul Nehlen, who's challenging Big Ears Ryan, spoke at a rally this week and was joined by Steve Bannon. So now he's got Steve Bannon by his side, and that's very, very good. I'm telling you, Paul Nehlen can defeat Ryan. It can be done. And they obviously have polls that show that Ryan's in big trouble in Wisconsin, and that Paul Ryan, people are starting to listen to what he has to say. He supports the Trump agenda. Paul Ryan needs to be defeated by Paul Nehlen. So I encourage you all to look more into Paul Nehlen. We'll keep watching this race very closely, but they've already started trying to hit him. But he's a fairly clean guy, so we'll just keep watching. But just letting you know that. By the way, that rally, it was sold out. Paul Nehlen, sold out rally, joined by Steve Bannon. Taking down Big Ears Eddie Munster Ryan, #1 priority in 2018. Madonna's new live album just released this week. Believe it or not, she only sold 3,848 copies. 3,848 copies. Wow. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that Madonna's career as an artist is over. It's over, and it probably has been over a long time ago. But she's done. You know, she's done. She's been done for a long time. And, of course, we haven't heard much of her political stuff since she got that little visit from the Secret Service, have we? Big news here. Obama has been funding anti-Trump resistance through a massive mortgage money shakedown. Never have we seen an ex-president undermine the next presidential administration like this. There was never a peaceful transfer of power to the Trump administration. From the Russian collusion to the landmines set up by the Obama administration and holdovers that are still there, the deep state is clawing to hang on to every ounce of power. You see what Obama did, in addition to putting all those people in all those places, setting up all those leaks and everything else. You wonder where all the resources are coming from to run this campaign. Well, now we know. We know that Obama used $640 million of money that was intended for mortgage relief has now been funneled into these pro-Obama, anti-Trump organizations such as La Raza, the National Urban League, the Community Reinvestment Coalition, and others. And this money was flowed to them so that they could carry out these operations. This is extraordinary. This is not something we've ever seen in American history before, where a president leaves office having just set many, many landmines for his successor, and then actively involves himself in covertly and overtly trying to destroy his successor. You know, we talk a lot about the Rotten Reverend, Lynch, Comey, all these other people. Do not forget, Obama was at the top of the heap. He's the tip of the pyramid. He's the tip of the spear. When we're taking down these criminals, let's not forget Obama. None of this would be happening without him. He's probably behind an awful lot of it. And this right here needs closer investigation. Now, Sessions has literally gone in and put a halt to this funding. But it appears that these Obama holdovers are continuing to fund these organizations with this money in they're directly going against what they're being told by the head of the Justice Department, which is Jeff Sessions. He's saying, cut this out, stop it, and they're just continuing. So apparently they don't have any fear of any repercussion, certainly nothing legal. I guess they believe the only thing that can happen to them is that they could be fired. We need to get these Trump people in, and we need to get these Obama people out. There's a lot of complications in why this situation is happening so slowly and why it's being dragged out. But whatever these things are, they need to get this stuff worked out. But ultimately they will. And when we finally do get this thing cleaned up, and Mueller has run his course, and the phony Russia investigation has run its course, the truth will still be there, lying there, waiting to be unearthed, as it is already. We're already seeing a lot of changes in the narratives. We are now seeing that the surveillance story is gaining more and more traction, more and more people talking about it, even people on the left. Believe me, the truth is rising and the lies are fading away. It's exactly what's happening. It's running out of steam. Hollywood liberals like Cher and Rosie O'Donnell express their love for Senator Magoo. Hollywood loves Magoo. So do Democrats and the liberal media, and even Bernie Sanders praising Magoo. Because, of course, he is the vote that he believes is going to be the vote that's going to stick Trump in the eye for the third time. But this story is not over yet. There's much more to come. I'll get back to that in just a moment. Senator Magoo. You know, before Senator Magoo kicks out his last breath, we're going to learn a lot more about Senator Magoo, which most of us already know. But believe me, there's much more to learn about Magoo that is going to become public, and I predict that he's not going to walk away from this thing as clean as he thinks. Michelle Obama trashes America first. Yeah, I guess she would, since her husband and her spent 8 years putting America last. That's right. Does anybody care what Michelle Obama thinks or says? No. Now we have a beautiful and intelligent First Lady who cares about the country and will put America first, unlike the Obamas. Trump, now at 45% approval. I just saw another poll, 48%. He is withstanding the onslaught. He's standing tall. He's looking good. He's rising in the polls. He's rising in the polls. Here's a very important story. Will Joe Manchin switch parties and deliver the vote needed to pass the Graham-Cassidy healthcare reform bill? I'm not a big fan of the Graham-Cassidy reform healthcare bill, but at least it gives more control back to the states. If you live in a conservative state, you probably like it. If you don't, you won't. It's not, I don't like it as far as it's not repeal and replace, but it will be better than no repeal at all. Let's put it that way. But Joe Manchin is a guy that everybody's watching very closely. You know, Trump won Virginia, and after doing so, the Democratic governor, Jim Justice, switched parties and became a Republican. He has also recently, in the last couple of days, endorsed Joe Manchin, who is still a Democrat. He is hated by progressives. He's been shunned by the Democratic leadership. Joe Manchin is kind of a common sense, reasonable Democrat. He's still pretty much of a Democrat, but when you compare him to the corporate Democrats or the progressives, he's practically a libertarian. He's he's kind of an old school throwback, almost like a blue dog Democrat, the last one standing. And although he's not purely a blue dog Democrat, he's a rational, reasonable kind of Democrat from West Virginia. And you can bet that he's going to be getting a personal call from President Trump. And he's reading the tea leaves. He's been under a lot of pressure. He's being challenged by a progressive and possibly even another corporate Democrat. He has no friends, not too many friends in the Democratic Party right now. There's nothing he would probably love more to stick it in their eye. It's very likely, and it appears that he is somewhat on board with the Graham-Cassidy Healthcare Act. It appears that the governor has spoken with him, Jim Justice, who supports it, and it appears that he and Joe Manchin are in some agreement on that. And so it looks like Joe Manchin is on the watch list for one of them Democrats that may decide to switch over and change parties. And he's not the only one. They're reading the tea leaves, my friends. They know what's coming, but there's a lot of chatter coming out of D.C., so we'll be waiting and watching Joe Manchin on that list of the watch and see list. Will he switch parties? Give it about I don't know when that vote would have to happen. I heard that the vote has to happen by today, being Monday, but maybe they mean next Monday. Give it about a week or so. If it comes down to them needing one vote, and they know they've been screwed by Senator Magoo, and they really don't know where Rand Paul wants. He wants a lot of things they probably can't deliver to get his vote. It's very likely that Joe Manchin could turn, become a Republican, cast that vote that they need, and he would be considered a hero. He would also be in the Senate on the winning side, on the side that's actually in power. And I think Joe Manchin knows that the Republicans are going to be in power in the Senate 2018 and probably at least through 2020 and possibly beyond. I think Mr. Manchin can read the tea leaves. Russian Alpha Bank has now become the third party to launch a defamation lawsuit against BuzzFeed. They just keep piling on. The pressure continues to mount on BuzzFeed. I'm telling you, watch this civil suit. Watch all three of these civil suits, because we now have Mr. Gubarev, who's well into his suit. We had Carter Page announcing he was going to sue just 2 weeks ago, and now Alpha Bank is jumping on the bandwagon. There's something going on that these people know that's not public, that's leading them to want to jump into this thing. Either there's a deal being cut, some sort of a settlement, or someone's getting ready to fold their cards and talk. Maybe it's Magoo. Maybe it's Magoo. The question is, will Trump jump in? Michael Cohen, his attorney, has already suggested he might. Remember, of all the people who were slandered in this deal, no one was slandered harder than the president. No one was slandered harder than Trump. Mr. Gubarev was slandered, Carter Page was slandered, Alpha Bank was slandered. You know, Alpha Bank, they of course in the dossier was accused of paying bribes to Putin. So all three of these entities, Gubarev, Carter Page, and Alpha Bank, they all have a rock solid case against BuzzFeed. It's not a question of whether or not they were slandered. It's a question of who is responsible. Is it going to be Christopher Steele? Is it going to be GPS Fusion? Or are they going to try to dump it on McCain, possibly Comey and the FBI? Something's cooking. I don't know what it is, but there's something cooking with this. These people don't throw money down the toilet. They believe that there's something there. And in the case of Carter Page, he's only looking for $75 million. That probably doesn't even cover his legal fees. So there's something cooking here, folks. We'll continue to watch this story very, very closely. Devin Nunes says that if Christopher Wray and Jeff Sessions do not produce the documents and witnesses that he has asked for with the past two subpoenas, that he will hold both in contempt, and they will be forced to come in an open session and explain to the American people why they are blocking these investigations. The American Spectator, Daryl J. Flynn, asking the question, will the wiretapping of the Trump campaign become known as Obama's Watergate? This is the first such story I've seen which is finally starting to get it, really get it. Exactly what I've been saying. Exactly what I have been saying. The fact of the matter is, as the case is laid out, Putin did not hack the elections. Obama did. That's what the facts are showing us. The facts that they're attempting to bury. The facts that they're attempting to cover up. That's what this whole Russian collusion thing is all about. It's a smoke screen to cover up the real crime, which was the political espionage operation to destroy the candidacy and then the presidency of Donald Trump. And now that he's president, to continue that, in fact, to ramp it up, at the same time to try to cover up the crime that they committed. But in due time and in due course, as the facts emerge and bubble to the surface, the truth will come out. The truth will come out. The Sunshine State News, Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz's own hometown paper, says the Iran investigation, all roads lead back to Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz. They make a very good point in this article, if you read it, the Sunshine State News, that the Iwans, particularly Imran Iwan, had total access, including having the password of Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz, which gave them carte blanche into the system. This, at the very least, would be negligence of the highest order on the part of Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz, at the very least. And we know there's much, much more going on. We don't know what sort of activities that the Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz is into in regards to things of a romantic nature, but it appears that Mr. Iwan has got some pretty kinky things going on with his romantic life. we have to wonder, is there a Debbie Blabbermouth Wassman Schultz Imran Awan child out there? Remember when Awan told the court, his lawyer told the court, that he needed to have the ankle bracelet taken off because he has child care needs that he has to tend to, knowing good and well that his children were back in Pakistan with his wife at the time? What child is he talking about? Good question. TowerGate, day 203, Monday, 2017. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back with you tomorrow night. You guys take care. Bye.